It's the story of me climbing the Grand Teton
Oh.
in Jackson.
Are you sure it's not pronounced Teton?
It's the Grand Tit.
No, Teton.
Big. That actually means big tit, by the way.
Does it?
Yes, 100%. Some horny ass French dudes were roaming around the plains for so long that they saw some pointy mountains and they said, that looks like tits.
And that's probably why Kanye loves it so much.
I can't make that up. I wish that was not true.
All right.
They're called the tits.
Okay. All right.
The Grand Teton is like the tallest of them. It's just under 14,000 feet. I was 20 years old. My stepfather was 60 and his son was 30.
Okay.
And they asked me like 2 weeks before. Like I had just gotten back from traveling around the world, and they were like, my stepfather was like, "Hey, do you want to climb the Grand?"
I know you're still putting your weight back on.
Yeah.
And you're not in any sort of physical shape to do this, but do you want to climb the Grand?
And I was like, "Are we going with a guide?" And he was like, "No, my son is a really, really good mountain climber. He's done multiple like 14,000 foot peaks and all that. For him, this is just another one to like tick off his bucket list."
Cool.
And you and me are just going to be going along for the ride, essentially. We're just going to be like following James. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And we get there. It's all fun. We start at like 8 a.m. or something like that. You have to start at the trailhead and walk all the way up. I didn't train for this whatsoever.
Right.
I mean, literally zero. We have rope. We have helmets, all that good stuff. But it just starts as just on a hike. James takes off. He's in incredibly good shape, and he just bolts ahead of us. I mean, boom.
Yeah.
And I am in the middle, and then my stepfather's name's Chuck is in the back.
I want to just clear something up for our listeners. Chuck is who the movie Good Luck Chuck is based on, correct?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
It's just a recreation of his life.
Yeah, Dane Cook portraying a younger your stepfather.
Yeah, Dane Cook and Jessica Alba is my
Your
mom.
mom. Yeah, okay, right.
James takes off. I get to a point where there's the trail just ends and you can either go left or right. And there's a dude sitting there eating a granola bar. I always remember this. He's just eating a granola bar, taking a break.
He's got a fucking teapot out and he's just like,
taking a break.
Oh, it took you so long.
And I go, which way to the Grand? Because I have no idea. I was told that James is going to be guiding us. He just left. I was like, I have no idea where to go. And he just like points to the left, and then he's like, you should probably know that if you're going to go up there. And I was like, you shut the fuck up.
He's not wrong, but also you don't need that.
And then I was like, okay, so then I continue on. I'm just hiking by myself for miles and miles, and I ran out of water.
Cool.
While I was hiking. And
Beautiful. Up. While you were hiking up.
Oh yeah, I mean it's up the entire time.
Great. But I mean, you didn't run out of water, kind of on the way back down towards the vehicle.
Oh, no. This took multiple days.
Oh.
This is like such a big mountain that you sleep on the mountain and then you summit and come down.
So you and Dane Cook in a tent.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I get to the spot where the trail just disappears, and there's these big like house-sized boulders that you just kind of have to like scramble over and scramble in between and like go in between these big house-sized boulders. And I stopped there and I said, I'll wait for Chuck, at least, because fuck knows where James went. He's out of here. And Chuck finally arrives, and I was like, you got any water? And he was like, I was about to ask you if you had any water.
Oh, no.
And there's a stream going.
Yeah.
And we're like, we had been told that there in this stream on this mountain, it's a frequently climbed mountain, there has been cases of like giardia. And if you're going to drink from the stream, that's fine, but you need iodine pills.
Yeah.
And he was like, James has the iodine pills. And we were both like, fuck. And I was like, well, we're just going to continue on. But we stuck together this time. And at this point now, like the elevation really starts to take its toll.
Yeah, you're like, oh, there's no oxygen here.
Yeah, like we got above the tree line, and you're just exposed to the sun, and we had no water. I was super dry, and the trail got really like braided, and so we would like accidentally follow this whack ass game trail that wasn't going where we were supposed to do. Then we'd have to backtrack and climb back up. And there was this one section I remember we got to this game trail, and it was sort of like a boulder was right in the middle of the path, and the boulder was cracked in half and it had like a 1.5 foot gap in it or something like that. And I was like, and we could see the trail through the gap. It continued on, and I was like, I can squeeze through that rock. I can take my backpack off, push my backpack in front of me, and squeeze through that rock. Chuck has he's been a drywaller for like 40 years. He's a big barrel chest.
Yeah, he's full of drywall.
Yeah, he's a big barrel chest and big shoulders. He's like, I cannot fit through there. I will just climb up and around the outside of the boulder, which is just like super exposed drop off the backside. And I was like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah. I pushed through. It was super sketchy. He had like no water in him and stuff, and he was like shaking as he was like climbing around this boulder and stuff. He finally got onto like solid ground, and he was like, can we just like take a second? I was like, yeah, Jesus Christ.
I know you don't want your stepdad to die, in your hands.
I don't want to just watch him drift away, just to fall down. I was like, oh my fucking God. And I should say that I adore Chuck and James for that matter, even though he really fucked us over on this trip. He then, the elevation was now starting to get really serious. We were up at like 12,000 feet. And it was like, I'd never experienced that much elevation before for that sustained period of time. And so I would like take like 20 steps. I would count them out in my head because I was so tired and so thirsty. And I said, I'm going to take 20 steps and then I'm going to catch my breath. And then I would you just don't catch your breath.
Yikes.
You're just like panting. Like the whole time. You're like panting for like 2 minutes and then you're like, oh, this is where I'm at. This is where we stay. We just stay at this level. Okay. All right. I guess I'm going to keep walking then. And then we knew that there were some established tents from some guiding companies up there and somewhere, and we had to be pretty near them because we were nearing our own campsite for the night. And we saw just the very edge of one, but it was up this insane, like shale, scree field awfulness. And I was like, they will have water. Like they're like official guides. Like it's a pretty established tent up here. They're like a wall tent and stuff like that. And so we scrambled up this shale and it was miserable. And you're just like taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. You're just like sliding on these rocks. Mm-hmm. Absolutely exhausting. I literally put the rest of my energy into this. And then right as we get to the top, we like climb up over the edge. We see the path we should have taken up there. We just like couldn't. So we were kind of like delirious and like not doing well.
Yeah, that's how I get when I'm hungry too.
And then we get up there and the company's called Exum, EXUM. The Exum guide is just like standing there and he's just like, you can tell that he's like pretty disappointed in us because we look bad. And he's like, Jesus Christ. He's like, what's up? And we're like, do you have any water? And he's like, no. And I was like, oh, are you fucking kidding me? And he's like, well, we do, but it's got to be for like our guests and stuff like that. And I was like, God, is there any water that I can drink without needing iodine pills? And he was like, if you go to the source of the river, which is back down where you came from and just like 100 yards further on the trail you were already on, that's where the source of the little creek is. You can drink from the source and it'll be fine. And we were like, oh my God. And then we're like, well, where's our campsite? Because we like named the campsite. And he's like, oh, that's like only 200 yards further down the trail. And we were like, son of a bitch. So we start walking back down this shale, like skiing basically down this shale. And then right as we get to our campsite, James walks up behind us.
Whoa.
Yeah. And we were like, and this is funny because James was 30 at the time and Chuck is 60, but he's still his dad.
Yeah.
You know, and you ever seen like an adult person get parented?
Yeah.
You know? Chuck was like, James Johnson, where the fuck have you been? And he's like, I'm sorry, Dad. He's like, you're not supposed to be leaving us and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, he's a grown man getting parented. And he, at that split, also didn't know where to go and went the wrong way for like 6 miles. He did like double the hiking we did and ended at the same exact position at the same time. Okay, we get the iodine. I just chug water like a lunatic. We go to sleep. Chuck snores. Like, I mean, snores hard.
Yeah.
It's 3 dudes in a tent, in a 3-person tent, which is if anyone has ever tried to put the recommended number of people in a tent.
It's a tight fit.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I got maybe an hour of sleep. I should also say we had to wake up at 3:30 a.m.
Ew.
in order to summit and get all the way back down in one day.
Ew.
And so we went to bed at like 10 I maybe got like an hour or two of sleep before
Jesus.
3:30 rolled around. And in the pitch black dark, you like collapse your tent and everything. And you stash all that so you don't have to summit with it. You'll grab it on the way back down.
Gotcha.
And then we start the hike up. And it's in like the darkness. And now when we were planning our routes, well, when James was planning the route, he asked us, do we want to do the easy route or the second easiest route that has a lot better views and is a lot cooler? And I mean, he kind of like baited us into it.
Yeah.
And we were like, well, how much harder is the second easiest route? And he's like, it's not, I was like, how much rock climbing, like full on rock climbing are we going to have to do? Cause I don't rock climb. Like that's not something I do. And he's like, oh, I know all the pitch numbers and I'm not a rock climber, but it's only a 5.1. I have no fucking clue what it is. He tried to give me all the numbers and I was like, okay. So we see all the headlights for the guiding groups and they're doing their easy route or whatever. And we're doing this other route. And we get going and now things start to get really, really steep. Like the last 1,000 feet of elevation is like very, very steep. Vertical depending on which route you take.
Okay.
And James just keeps saying, I gotta find this. There's this couillard, which is like a shaft of rock, right? Like a big split in a cliff.
Okay.
Couillard is French for chimney. And he's like, called Wall Street, and it should be really obvious. And I can't. He's like, I read all the guidebooks and everything like that, and he's like, I can't find it. And at one point I had to spider up. Like hands and feet, like friction spidered up. Like it wasn't very high. It was only like 6 feet, but I still had to like spider up it. And I was like, James, where the fuck are we going? And he's like, I can't find Wall Street. And we're like trying to look at the ridges and stuff like that. He's like, should be really obvious. And then he summits one ridge, and then he was like, oh, we're on the wrong ridge. He's like, there it is. He can like see it. So we had to down climb, which anyone who's ever climbed, down climbing is horrifying.
It's harder. Yeah,
it's way scarier. We had to down climb the ridge we were on, only to go back up the other ridge.
Great.
We get to the bottom of Wall Street, finally, at this couillard, and James sees two of his climbing buddies that he didn't even know were there. And I guess you just meet people in like the mountaineering industry after a while.
Yeah.
And he's like an actual mountaineer. He's very good at this.
From what you've told me, he sounds great at it.
He's very skilled. He's very shit at planning routes. Technically proficient.
Yes.
And they were like, oh yeah, we're doing the north face of the Grand, which is the hardest way to do it, but they're very serious.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, we just got trapped on there for like 2 days and we have no food. Do you have any food?
Oh my God.
And they were like, what? And they're like, yeah, the weather turned south on us and we're like starving. Do you have food? So we gave them all our food.
Okay.
So now we have like, not all of our food, but we gave them most of our food. And they were going back down. And he was like, I think the worst part of this is right at the top of Wall Street. He's like, if we get past that, I think the rest of this should be pretty easy. And I was like, okay. And we get to the part, and it's called, and you might have a little cheeky laugh at this. It's called the reach around.
Beautiful.
And what it is like, imagine like a softball cut in half, like half an orb, just stuck to the side of a cliff. And then at the bottom of the bottom third of the golf ball or softball or whatever, there's a crack, and the crack is big enough for you to put your toes. In, and you got to just wedge your toes in and basically just scooch around. Scooch. And it is exposure off to the back. I mean, it is 1,000 feet. The most exposure I've ever had in my life.
Disgusting.
I mean, open exposure.
Nah, dude.
Of course, we roped in, but that James was like, I'm roped in. I've climbed at like rock climbing gyms before where roped in means you can fall and you're totally fine.
This one is don't fall.
Yeah. He's like, if you fall, you won't die. And I was like, okay. And he's like, don't fall.
Yeah.
He's like, you will get really hurt.
Yeah.
You won't die, but
you'll get the shit beaten out of you. Yeah.
You'll like break legs and stuff like that. And he's like, so don't fall. And I was like, great. I hate this. And the reason it's called the reach around is because there's really good handholds, safe for like your left hand, right? And you're scooching to your right, and you're shuffling your feet along the crack at the bottom. There's really good handholds, but there's sooner or later you run out of handholds. And in order to grab with your right arm all the way around the other side, that's why it's called the reach around, you have to let go with your left hand.
Nah.
Which is like, and it is like rock. That's like rock climbing. No. It's always 3 points of contact.
Yes.
You never, like 2 points of contact is never good. And so I was like freaked. I just like wouldn't let go with my left hand.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I am like struggling fucking hard with this. And they were like, you have to let go because then I can like shift my whole body and reach. I finally did it. I got super freaked out.
Yeah.
Chuck struggled with it more. He was like, we really had to like talk him through it and like try to psych him up. And he was also the last one to go. James had to go first so that he could anchor the rope.
Right.
And then I went in the middle, and then so Chuck was on the other side. Like you can't see him when you start this like reach around. He's on the other side by himself.
Nah.
And I guess he just like talked himself out of it while he was over there by himself, which I don't blame him. He was like, fuck this. Then we do a couple more pitches, which is like, they were really easy, but they were just, and James was like on a plan.
Okay.
Well, it was what we thought. He was naming the pitches as we got to him, and he's like, this is this pitch, this is this pitch. We have 4 more pitches, we have 3 more pitches. And he's like, I keep waiting for the friction pitch.
Oh my God.
And we're like, what is the fucking friction pitch? And he's like, should be the hardest one. He's like, it's the only one that's like rock climbing. Like it'll be vertical. But it's really short. It's like, it's 15 feet of vertical, but it is vertical.
Okay.
And he's like, is this the friction pitch? And we did it. And he was like, I don't think that was the friction pitch. And then we get to it, and he's like, this is the friction pitch. And it's just this smooth ass piece of rock. It's called the friction pitch because there's no handhold. You have to just use friction to not fall off of it. And this was me and Chuck's fault. James just like just went right up it, and he's like, again, I'll anchor you at the top, you guys rope in and all that stuff. And we thought he wanted us to come one at a time, of course,
right,
which is what we thought as well. But we were also just listening to him, like he's much more experienced than us, and we both thought he said both, like, come now, and we thought that meant like both of us.
Oh.
And so now there's this crack that goes about a fourth of the way up the friction pitch.
Okay.
So you can climb the crack, but then after that it's game over.
Ugh.
Chuck goes in front of me, and I go right behind Chuck in the crack because I did not know.
Yeah.
And then Chuck hits the top of the crack, and he's like, I have nowhere else to go. And so like his feet are at my shoulders essentially, right? Like he's like above me. And he like yells down at me. He's like, I have nowhere else to go. And I'm like, I'm tired. My grip strength is failing. I can't just like sit here. And I see this it was literally like the size of a golf ball. I see a good handhold, but I need a place to put my foot out to my left. And it's like literally the size of a golf ball cut in half and just like stuck on there. And I like put my foot on that. And I mean, it just covered like the pad of my big toe.
Ugh.
Like that's it. And I had to, at this point, if I wanted to do this move, I would have 1 point of contact on the wall, which is to like let go with my right leg and right hand and just step up on that one piece to grab with my left hand to get like up and around Chuck.
Yeah.
And this is the part that I freaked out because as I let go, I think I was like filled with so much adrenaline and so much anxiety that my leg did like the sewing machine shake. Like it just like spasmed and shook as I was like, and I like barely grabbed the handhold, and then I just like scrambled up to the top, like way ahead of Chuck. I don't really know I kind of like blacked out the rest of the pitch because I was like, and then we get up there and it's literally a knife ridge. I mean, it's the width of your desk here. This ridge, and it's just like 1,000 feet of exposure and 1,000 feet of exposure, and I just literally like tucked myself in between some rocks, and James is like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm just gonna need a second. I really thought I was going down. Like while Chuck was finishing, I was like, I just gotta sit here for a second.
Yeah. Ugh.
And then after that, there was only 2 more pitches. They were really easy. We made it to the top. Ta-da, we've made it.
Now you have to go back down.
We summited a piece of cheese. I was eating a piece of cheese and it fell on the dirt up there. And they were like, you got to pack it out. And I'm like, I'm not packing out a piece of cheese. And so I ate it. So I ate some top of the Grand dirt. There was another couple up there, and a woman called her husband from while we were up there. It kind of ruined the moment for us.
Yeah, no kidding. Babe, I did it.
Yeah, that's literally what she was like. Guess where I am right now? I'm on the top of the Grand. And I was like, shut up.
That's like probably the only place in Wyoming you actually have cell service.
Yeah. She was like, I have great service. I'm like, I bet you do. Then we had to go down, and there's a rappel down,
yeah.
which is great because you can cover a lot of ground really easily. You don't have to down climb anything. And the XM guides use it. And so our plan was to wait for an XM group to come up and then just follow them.
Yeah.
Because we didn't exactly know where the rappel was. And
Okay.
James admitted that, but he's like, well, we should just be able to follow the guide group to the rappel.
All right.
And they leave and we follow them. And there's this huge long line. And they're guiding people that have like never experienced
Right.
like ropes or anything like that. So they have each person that gets there, they have to teach them.
Yeah.
And there's like 13 in the group. And so the guide in the back, he was like, yo, there's an unused rappel anchor further down there if you have your own ropes, which we did.
Yeah.
I would suggest you guys go do that one because this one's going to take us like an hour to get all these people down. And we were like, yeah, we're using that one. And then I had, the only time I'd ever rappelled in my life, I'd used the device called a gree-gree, which is essentially this piece of metal that gets wrapped around the rope that if you let go of the rope, it stops the rope
Yes.
for you. It's like a handbrake for a rope.
Right.
No, that's how how I've rappelled. I've never rappelled without one of those. We get there and James is like, yeah, you basically just grab it with your hand and hold on and just like let the rope out. And I was like, what happens if I let go of the rope? And he's like, you will just plummet.
Nah.
And I was like, no way. And then when you start this rappel, your feet are on the wall, but it's an overhang. So it's soon you were just dangling.
Yeah.
Like in the wind, in the breeze. And the only thing stopping you is your own right hand. That's it. That freaked me out pretty bad too.
Yeah.
Then we got down from that. James took off again. After that, it was just a hike down. James bolted again. I was in terrible shape. That hike down was the most physical I've ever pushed myself in my entire life. My like hips and my ass were so sore.
Yeah.
And so tired. Yeah, it took us forever.
So you pushed yourself to the limit.
There you go.
Remind me to never go hiking with James.
Oh yeah, he's an awful hiking partner. Apparently he's a fantastic mountaineer, but god damn.
Yeah, everything you said, I'm like, well, my dad wouldn't do that to me. Or like,
and Chuck was pissed. Chuck was absolutely
rightfully
pissed.
so.
The whole trip, he was like, "Oh, we had a great time. It was fun." I remember my mom asked, she said, "Would you do it again?" I said, "No." and she's like, "Well, maybe that might change later." It's been 6 years. The answer is no.